going back to looking at the numbers for 2019, our daytime average were 6 responders. With that, you can take out fire, police, and junior members. That may drop you down to about 3 or 4 active firefighters. Again, that winds up being our retired firefighters. Nothing against retired individuals, I'm not offending anybody. But that's what you're left with. Right now, you really can't use today or the last 3 months as an example because people have been laid off, not working. So right now, things are good. But as soon as we're out of the pandemic, the numbers are going to dwindle again and people have to go back to work.
Okay, maybe you could just give us a little backdrop in terms of what is the number of volunteers that you have available, what their training status is, what their certifications might be.
All right.
You know,
Right.
you talked about the average for 2019, but I mean, if you had to put a number to it today, what is it? You know, give us a backdrop of what you have available to you now.
Right now, we currently have 45 active firefighters that are trained various levels of training between Fire 1, Fire 2, EMT, vehicle rescue, rope rescue, multiple different classes that we have. Again, daytime right now, averaging about 12, again, because people aren't working. But it's going to fall back into where we were before. Again, we've tried with volunteer recruitment videos. We've tried with posters out front. Back in 2012, I took part of a volunteer workforce that the state of Connecticut put together, which was nationwide, looking into collecting information for volunteer organizations, how to get members. This isn't something that's unique to North Stonington. This is a nationwide issue. There is a shortage of volunteer firefighters. So we're on that committee for about 2 years collecting info with that. And again, they gave us materials, what we were using to put out to get volunteers. We used it. We put them out at the, different restaurants, stores, the town hall. We've done multiple pleas on the town's quarterly newsletter asking for more members, specifically daytime. And we've gotten no responses from that. The town nicely put together a video for us last year, again, with no interest, no more members. So it comes to the point where we've tried signs, mailings, videos, and this is the next step.
In terms of stating that you've got 45 active firefighters, I mean,
Yeah.
and that you're still soliciting, what's the goal? I mean, is there an endpoint here or not necessarily, or what would you need more than the 45?
You need daytime people. So when you have 45 firefighters, so you subtract the 6, so it drops you down to what, 38 that are at work all day, and it leaves you to 6 available in town. So that's what we're looking for, is available members or residents during the daytime to respond to emergencies. Again, these individuals have to be willing to take the training, maintain their training, participate in calls, things like that. So it's, no, there are requirements that all of our members must maintain. Again, the town puts a lot of money into training each individual firefighter to be to the level that they're expected to be. There is no difference between a volunteer firefighter and a career firefighter. They're expected to have the same level of training and same level of care and response when they go to an emergency.
Okay, again, I'm asking these questions just to lend background here. Of the 6 daytime, where are they in terms of certification? Are they senior enough to do the job or not?
I'm not going to say that they're not able to do the job. There are senior members. Yes, they are senior members that have been here well over 40 years. So they can do the job at the risk of their own safety at points. So I'm not going to say they can't do their jobs. They'll do everything they can.
All right. I know that not all of them are certified to to operate the equipment, for instance,
Right.
drive the trucks and that sort of thing.
Yep.
So am I assuming that, or should we assume that in the 6, there are people who are certified to drive the trucks?
Yeah,
operate the equipment?
in the 6, you have, again, 6 is an average. So it depends on the time of day, what day it is. If guys have, I work a rotating schedule, so I'm off some days, I'm not here. So the 6, again, I can't pinpoint, these are my 6 guys. But typically you have 2 drivers. Again, we have 6 pieces of apparatus. Yes, not every call requires every truck to respond to it. But if there is a structure fire, it does require every truck to get out. So that's where we're looking to ensure we have at least 2 drivers in the building to get the first 2 pieces out with our volunteers. Understanding we are not replacing our volunteers. You still are heavily relying on the volunteer workforce. The 2 are guaranteeing there's drivers in the building to get the truck out the door.
How about give us a number in terms of frequency of calls? I know that's very fluid. It can vary from hour to hour, week to week, month to month, but kind of on average, what does it look like? We have a lot of new members on the board, Chief, so you need to help us out here.
You're looking for a year, or you're looking for weekly? How you want to see it?
Whatever is the easiest way to present. I think what we're just looking for is, okay, during the day, what kind of is the call load that one could assume for a year or a quarter?
Well, with again, you never know when emergencies are going to be. It's different every time, but we have roughly last year, I got to pull up my report, is about 300 calls last year, and majority of them were daytime calls. So again, you can say about 150 calls were during the day, but again, you can go from a call today and not have a call for 3 or 4 days, then you have a call, or we can do, again, like I said, 3 or 4 calls in one day and have a week with nothing.
Right.
So it's really hard to say that they're going to be busy every day, but they're going to be, the point is point of them not being busy is the point that they're here when they need it.
Yeah. I asked, is there data that's collected just kind of on a rolling basis that gives you a good picture of what the demand might be? So, I think you're helping us out there with that.
Yeah. Every month, there's a chief's report that breaks down how many calls he had during the previous month. It tells you how many daytime calls, how many nighttime calls. It tells how many members responded on average to daytime and nighttime calls.
Right.
And that's typically been shared with the selectman's office. Recently, they haven't been since all this started, so we're going to be getting that back together here soon. So ensuring they're getting all the data monthly.
In terms of having, I guess, predictable individuals at the Emergency Management Center during the day, certainly them being compensated is an incentive. Okay, we can get a couple people because they're going to be compensated. So I think that's understandable. What if these people were not full-time during the day, but were on call and given an incentive for being there, much like EMTs are, in terms of being paid during those daytime hours, where they wouldn't have to be there continually, but there's an incentive for them to show.
We're currently doing that point system, pay per call type of thing, where the volunteers receive a point for every call, and it breaks down at the end of the quarter to a dollar value. So it's like $15 a call they get for 4 hours worth of work. The per diem staff is separate. They are not going to be our members. They are firefighters from the outside coming in to increase our daytime staffing. So it wouldn't, again, legally, you cannot hire your own, you cannot volunteer and be paid by the same organization. So the individuals that would be per diem firefighters, no benefits, no more than 30 hours a week, and unable to unionize. I knew that was a question that was previously asked. They are below the level of requirements for hours to be offered all that. With that being said, they are a separate pool of people that would work. Again, you're looking at keeping them to 2 shifts a week, no more than 3, because we're looking at 10-hour shifts.
Okay. I know it sounds like I'm asking a lot of questions, Chief, but, you know, the majority of the people on this board don't have
Nope,
any of
that's
this
fine.
information. So what we're trying to do is just flesh it out a little bit so we understand both the request and the need. So I'll take a pause. I have more, but let's hear from other board members. Questions for the chief?
Yeah, please.
Ann Aiken, recognized. Go ahead, Ann. We can't hear you, Ann. No?
Sorry about that.
There you go.
So I actually saw the video when it came out. And I looked into it, and I looked into the training, and the training is extremely physical. You're saying that all of your volunteers have to go through that training?
All of our volunteers at one certain point were certified at least to the level of firefighter 1. Yes.
Okay.
They do not actually get certified. We train to the level of in-house, which is the same standard the state certifies at. So what we do is we get our members basically trained up to use them, and then they can actually be used and then take their Fire 1 certification class to the state of Connecticut.
So firefighter 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're certified to operate equipment, or are they?
No, that is just training you in the skills of being a firefighter. The difference is you have different levels of firefighter, and then driving is a whole separate thing. You need a special license in the state of Connecticut to drive a fire truck. You need a Q endorsement on your license, or CDL. That allows you to drive fire apparatus with a tank endorsement. With that, they have to go through a course to ensure they know how to drive apparatus. Then there's another class to ensure you know how to pump truck. We typically do that in-house. We take them down to the village, wherever in town. We pump from the streams and rivers, wherever we got, to ensure they're competent in pumping the apparatus or running all the equipment prior to them driving to an emergency.
Okay, so with that being said, I mean, if you were talking about 2 paid firefighters, you would have to find individuals who really had quite a resume of certification or training.
Not
And
really.
Then the question is, okay, these are things we need to know or would like to
Yep,
know. Go ahead.
Fine. Because with it, you look at a lot of, again, you're going to look at the list, you can put on the application with your requirements of what you're looking for. It's not going to be any different than any other per diem job in the area. Typically, if you look, the departments around us, it's career firefighters that work a rotating schedule that staff the firehouses, the volunteer firehouses in the area. So you'll have guys that are career full-time firemen on their days off will come and staff your firehouse as a per diem job. So they're already going to have the qualifications, certifications, because it's their full-time job, and they're just carrying them over for a part-time job.
So these potentially are people in other municipalities or are working in the corporate world with a similar job description and responsibility.
Right.
Is that correct? Right. Okay, more questions?
Yeah, please. This is Paul Simon.
Paul.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I know I sent a couple of questions to you, and thanks for the clarity around your request and what the committee is doing. I
Right.
was wondering if you can really talk a minute about the committee's work, of which you are a member of, I believe.
Yep.
And is per diem fireman one of the options that you folks might be looking at as to better protect the townsfolk?
That is my intention. We haven't gotten to that point in the committee yet. We're still trying to get a list together of questions to ask departments in the state of Connecticut that have the same land size and population and tax income. So we're trying to finalize a list of questions to be able to start interviewing.
Yeah. Do you think the two firemen you're asking for now might be the scope might be too small? Have you considered other options, perhaps a satellite firehouse, for example? Again, I'm speaking way out of turn here, but do you think there might be something bigger and better, perhaps, that could come out of the committee's work when that work's finished?
Well, I've spoke before is we're looking for two. Who knows, after we're done studying, this committee might come back and say you need 5, 6, I don't know. It's very early in this committee to be making decisions and saying that, yes, they need this, they don't need this.
No.
This request is from the fire company. It has nothing to do with the committee's research and what they're moving on. As a committee, we have a long way to go. And the fire company presented this unanimous vote from all the members in the fire company that voted to support this budget to put this forward. So just to be clear, this isn't just me saying we need it. It is your volunteers asking you for this.
Right. No, I get it. And I guess I look at your request and the work the committee's been commissioned to do, and I see a link there that perhaps could be, the answer could be bigger and better that we don't even know what the questions to ask yet. So, I mean,
Right.
Does it give you any kind of pains to then just kind of tap the brakes and see how the committee does, especially since you're on it, to see what might come from it? It might be something we don't expect, and it could be something fantastic.
I don't think, it would be beneficial to the taxpayers and for life safety to pump the brakes on this. This has been a known issue. We've been discussing this. This is many years of talk about this coming, and we needed it. We've tried volunteers. We're looking at different towns. It's great. What other towns might be able to do further away from here because they're the same size, but you got to look in our general area. How many towns around us have 95 Route 2 and a casino next door during the day that we can see up to potentially over 100,000 vehicles driving through town. We may have a population of 5,000-ish in town, but we could potentially have over 100,000 vehicles driving through our town that, again, our volunteers are responsible for protecting.
No, I got you. Is there any other options you've considered besides the 2 full-timers on day shift? Is there something else that might really benefit the company?
The only thing would be full-time. That's full-time people working with benefits. Again, that's a lot larger of a charge to the town, where we really don't want to go to that route. The per diems is the cheapest and probably easiest way to get what we're looking for, and not has a large impact on our town's budget.
Right. And right now, I mean, who's up at the firehouse now? I haven't had the pleasure to tour the facility yet, but are there folks that actually live there, stay there, are there for 20 hours a day?
Yep, there's an ambulance crew on here typically 24/7. You come on, knock on the front door, and you can come in anytime. They'll give you a tour.
Oh, that's great. So the ambulance guys are there all the time, 24 hours a day. How big is that staff?
There's only 2 people for the ambulance.
2 people.
Yep.
Okay. I guess I'll pause there and let somebody else hop in if they like.
For board members who have not viewed the facility, I mean, that was a big effort a number of years ago that has come to reality. In fact, we're just closing out that project. And as compared to where our volunteer fire company was housed, it's quantum leaps ahead, and we're very proud of it. A question I've got, Chief, it was interesting what you had to say about Route 2, 95, the casino in particular. Is there a relationship with their firefighting services on the reservation? I mean, in that these routes, they're very dependent on, and So I didn't know if there was any synergy between North Stonington Fire Department and the Mashantucket Nation.
There is, they're part of our mutual aid agreement where they respond in to confirmed fires. So it's not going to be a fire alarm activation, motor vehicle accident, anything like that. If there's a confirmed working structure fire, so a house on fire, building on fire that we've received multiple calls for, they're going to be coming with 2 firemen on their fire truck. So they're coming from that side of town. Again, they're not automatically started unless it's a confirmed call. So you could pull up to a smoke investigation and you realize to finally get there, it's a house on fire. They're not going to come until then.
All right, we're open to more questions from board members for the chief. Carolyn, do you have any questions? You seem to have a lot of background relative to the fire company, just from history and family members.
I don't really have a lot of questions. I think that, like I've said before, I've heard the need. I know my husband served for many years. He's no longer active. He served for 47 years. So, you're talking about a group of men and women who are aging. And that's, I think, where the struggle comes in. If we don't find young people who are interested in doing this as volunteers, then you have to look at the alternatives. So, that's what, I'm thankful that the chief was able to speak tonight and, speak to the need. So thank you, Chief.
And you're recognized, Ann Aiken.
So in addition to the cost simply to pay the per diems, are there other costs that we would have to cover as well? Training, equipment, or is it just the cost for their time?
Right now, the way I'm looking at it, it would be just for their time because we're going to roll the gear you have to purchase for them into our current budget to buy their gear for them. They're training, they're already going to come in with training, but they would be doing continued training on shift when they're here. So it really, only thing we're looking basically would have to be is buying the gear, which we have the money in the budget for every year we purchase gear, and then uniform shirts and stuff like that, which again, we would cover.
Paul, you're recognized.
Thank you. Chief,
Yeah.
This line item sits with this Board of Selectmen. What's been their input on this to you? I know you probably had many conversations with them. Is their answer wait for the committee's work, or they consider it totally detached from your request as well?
At this point, it's let's wait to see what the committee has, because the comments are the town typically won't vote for something unless there's a lot of supporting documentation and a committee formed to investigate things. That's their stance. My stance is absolutely opposite. Is we have a need, we've shown the need. We are the experts in this field. The volunteer fire company has members that have been serving here for over 50 years, and we have members. I've been serving for 22 years. We know what we've been through. We know what we need. You can create all the committees you want and look into things. We're telling you there's a need. This is the need. Looking into other towns, things, that's great. If we come up down the road that we find there's a better way of doing what we're trying to do, we can recalibrate and make the changes. But this is the best thing that we can find as a fire company that will address the current need.
No, I think that's fair. I would agree that it seems like there's a staffing gap there of some ilk. I'm not sure what the answer is, but right now the Board of Selectmen is not in favor of putting this in, is my understanding, and until they hear back from the committee. I didn't see that.
That's my. my understanding is they cut it prior to coming to you. So
Yeah.
it's out of the budget. And so again, the committee's been formed, the committees, they're doing their work. Again, two separate issues. This is a fire company request, looking for the funding, and the town has created a committee to investigate other options and ways to do it. So this is really two separate things going on.
The committee, is it staffed with career firemen like yourself?
Where?
The committee itself, is there some very experienced folks like yourself on it, or are you the only one?
There's only, on the committee, it's myself as a firefighter, and the ambulance, you have a firefighter, well, I'm a firefighter EMT. The ambulance has a paramedic firefighter on it, and then we have 3 citizens from town.
All right, so there's experience speaking out on that committee as well. That's good to know. How do you, I keep going back to the committee because I like these things. I'm hopefully that really, this is something good for the whole town, but is it, feel your voice is being heard in that committee too, or is it really too early in that conversation, in that?
No, I think we're working very well together. Everybody has their voice, and we're working together. As long as my computer, they can hear me, because last meeting they couldn't hear half the things I said, but.
That's not you, that's all.
We're working together. We're moving forward. It's a long road. To say this is only going to be a 6 to 9 month committee, I think is really premature to say that. I think there's a lot of work to be done. This isn't going to happen overnight. There's a lot of things to look at. Again, emergency services isn't based on just numbers. You can't just look at, because a town is the same size as us, has the same population, and the taxes are this. It's looking at what are we protecting? What are our hazards we are protecting? No, we got to look at things more than just a spreadsheet that says numbers. We have to really dig into each town to see, is it really like North Stonington? And then my opinion is, no, we're doing that. We also need to look at towns immediately around us. We're southeastern Connecticut. What is southeastern Connecticut faced with? And you look around us, every town around us has some sort of paid staff during the day, because they've seen the struggle. They have addressed the struggle. In Connecticut, the only town that typically does not have some sort of paid staff now around us is Wickedy-Quack. They have large industry just outside their town border where guys are allowed to leave work to respond to calls, which is a lifesaver for them. We don't have business in town where people work basically in town or even able to leave. So again, when my members leave to go to work in the morning, they're leaving town. So even if they did have the option to leave, they would be coming back from Groton or wherever they work at.
I see. No, I can understand it sounds like you have a good argument for it, but are the committee members with you tonight, or are you here representing the whole committee, or yourself here this evening?
I'm representing the fire company tonight. I am not speaking for the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
In terms of a couple of things, I think most townspeople have high regard for our volunteer firefighters. I don't think they have a lot of depth in terms of knowledge, in terms of what our inventory of equipment is, what our facility is like, what's there that really is helping public safety. So, I think a presentation along that line that really dresses out what are we and how are we represented at this point? How are we equipped? How are we trained? So I think that would be an important element. I don't know if that particular issue had been addressed vis-a-vis the committee, but I think there are a lot of townspeople who really don't know, but would hope if the need is there that you'll show up and get the job done. Having said that, I think the criticality, I like using that word because I want to know exactly why and how important is it? What's the distinction? And I would have to think about response time. As you know, and most people perhaps here know that, as things happen, every minute counts, so, I mean, when we're talking 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, for some things that we do in our life, doesn't seem like a lot of time, but that is a lot of time if you have an emergency.
Right.
So in terms of having per diem people, would this enhance response time? So we'll put that question to you.
Definitely would. Again, we respond to multiple calls. Again, if you have 2 members or paid staff in the building, you have volunteers. Again, we have a base of volunteers that live close to the firehouse. And again, we have a large town. We all know that. We have guys as far as ways Denison Hill and Northwest Corner Road, almost in Preston. So your first ring of members show up within usually 3 to 4 minutes. And if there's a guy already got a truck out on the ramp, they jump in the truck, they leave. You're not waiting for a guy to get in the station to get the truck started, pulled out, and get the guys on the truck. They're already ready to go. They run in, get the gear, jump on the truck, and off they go. It would definitely increase response time. Again, with other aspects, you can, different calls. I mean, if it's a brush fire, they can both jump in one truck and leave immediately. So every call is a different type of response. Some calls, you're taking a truck that holds 6, and other calls you're taking a truck that holds 2. So it depends on the incident.
If I had to press you though to say, just in considering the universe of all possible events, how would 2 individuals who were at the firehouse enhance response time? By how much? By a factor of whatever?
You probably gonna shave off, probably 2, 3, 4 minutes off of a response time, maybe. Again, it all depends. Is you're looking at, you're still relying on your volunteers to fill the crew. So
Yeah,
it's guaranteeing a driver to get the truck out. We use an I am responding system. We have an I am responding system that tells us who's coming. So when a call goes out, they get the message to their phone, they hit a button that tells them they're responding to the firehouse. So we can look on a board and see who's actually responding to the station. You look at the board and you see, there's 6 guys coming, it tells you about the average response time to the building. All right, I'm only getting 6 guys. Once I get those 2 guys that are closest, we're leaving. Now again, it used to be the day where we stood out in the front bumper of the truck waiting for firemen to pull in. You wait 5, 10 minutes to find out no one's coming. Well, those days are over. With this computer system, we know who's coming. And when you look at it, you can say, all right, I'm waiting for these 2 guys and I'm leaving because I already have 2 here instead of waiting for these 4 guys. So it's going to reduce your response time for the first truck or first 2 trucks.
Thank you. Mike Anderson, you're recognized. Mike Anderson?
Yep. Chief, I'm sure if you say through a budget process, can only give you 1 per diem. Could that 1 per diem fireman be able to respond immediately, or does he have to wait for at least can move out? And then I have a follow-up question.
Yep. 1 firefighter is a driver for 1 truck. It depends on what it is. If we're running to an EMS assist, yeah, he could leave by himself. But for a fire call, no, we cannot leave by himself. We do not leave the building by ourselves unless we have members meeting him on scene, which again, the I am responding app will tell us that you respond to the station or the scene. Our typical policy is everybody comes to the station and gets on a truck and responds to the call. Unless, obviously, we have members who live further out, in the Clarks Falls area and the Northwest Corner Road area where we see them on the app, we're going to go to the scene and meet them there. So the 1 person, yes, it helps, but no, we cannot leave by himself.
Okay. Now, you talked about a little bit about the towns around us. Can you give us information about, say, Voluntown, Preston, Griswold? How many per diem firefighters do those 3 towns have?
Voluntown has two day shifts. Preston has, I think it's 4, 2 in Preston City and 2 in Pawcatonic. And, yeah. And 2 overnight also in Preston. Pawcatuck has 3 and 1 that does evenings until I think midnight or 2 in the morning, something like that. So that's the other side of us.
How about Griswold?
They have nothing right now. I don't think Griswold has anything yet, but they're working on a day staffing program.
Now, do you know whether or not the price that you're talking about, the 50,000 per guy, is that comparable in those towns around us? Are we sure we're going to be able to attract people to fill those positions with that amount?
Yeah, I don't feel that's to be an issue. I mean, right now you're starting your EMTs out at $15 an hour to fill a service for the town. Again, with that, we're looking at being a little bit above that to ensure we have firefighter EMTs in the building. We're looking at maybe $17 to $18 range to ensure we have people in the building. Again, so we have a large pool of people that will. Again, it's a part-time job. It's not a full-time job. Again, most people wouldn't take it for that as a full-time job, but as a part-time job, it's not that bad. We're in the middle of what basically this area is doing.
Carolyn,
Okay,
how-
I'm sorry.
Mike, are you done?
I just thought of one other thing. You were talking about, there's probably guys that are full-time firemen that might do this on the side for a part-time job. Are these guys that would work the night shift and then come during the day shift? Are you talking about, would there be several different, rather than 2 guys, was it 2 positions that would be filled by, 5 or 6 different part-time guys? Can you explain that?
Yep. So if you're looking for 1 person, you would need to hire at least 3, with an understanding they're going to try to pull 2 shifts a week. 2 of them work 2 shifts, 1 would work 1 shift, you'd rotate around. If you're going to hire for the 2 positions, I would hire 6 per diems. Again, it's no different than what we're currently doing. We're sort of mirroring the ambulance system where you have 20 per diems that fill the shifts. Again, you put in your availability, you cover the shifts, and you rotate them through. So we're basically mirroring what we're currently doing on the ambulance side.
Okay, it makes sense. Thank you.
Carolyn,
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're recognized, Carolyn.
So Chief, I just wanted to clarify, so you're talking about trying to find firefighter EMTs. So they're not just firefighters, they're also EMTs,
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Because we respond also supplemental R1 to assist the ambulance when they're already on another call and another emergency comes in, we respond to it. Any cardiac arrest call where you're going to need extra hands, we respond also with the ambulance. So these individuals would be responding to medical calls to assist, just like every other town basically around us. When an ambulance goes to call, a fire truck goes to call, so you have an R1 that assists with, if it's a matter of lifting, forcing entry into a home to get to somebody, or performing CPR. That's what they're going to be expected to do. So.
Chief, is there a either formal or informal association of chiefs in the area where you get together and talk about what's going on in other departments and what the needs might be, and kind of cross-pollinate on resources and what may be new, any of the above? I mean,
there's two in the air. Well, there's three. You got Groton fire officers, which all the Groton chiefs get together. I typically don't attend that, but I do follow their minutes. The Stonington officers, which includes North Stonington, that group hasn't met probably about a year. But yes, we used to meet, sit down, and discuss things. It was more geared toward training, getting all of us to work together for training purposes. But also there is a New London County Fire Chiefs Association that meets all the New London County Fire Chiefs to discuss things. So there's a lot of different ways of gaining information, which I'm part of all of them, and I receive the minutes and follow all of them. So a lot of it, again, is, you know, like looking there in areas, a lot of the departments, you know, south of us are full-time or mostly full-time career departments. So that's where we're definitely different than them. So it's, you know, looking at what we do compared to a full-time career department is be totally different.
In terms of your organization, Chief, and I ask these questions just to have others have more knowledge. What does your organizational chart look like? You know, in terms of if you're the chief, how does it tier down from you? And, you know, is there a succession plan in place where you're grooming others to move forward to assume higher levels of responsibility?
It goes basically chief, deputy chief, assistant chief. We have three chiefs, and it splits off to two captains. We have a fire captain and we have a rescue captain. Under the rescue captain, you have a rescue lieutenant. Under the fire captain, you have first, second, and third lieutenant. That is our structure for responding to calls. That's our command structure. With our elections, again, we have elections and our officers are elected yearly with the exception of the chiefs. The chiefs are on the 3-year term rotating. So you have the rotating of the chiefs. You know, the captains and lieutenants are all yearly. So again, we have requirements in place that they must maintain a minimum amount of training, calls attended, and have minimum amount of certifications to be a officer.
In terms of that organizational chart now, are there deficits, spots that need to be filled at this point?
Nope, all of our rank and file in the fire company are filled.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, perhaps from board members that haven't participated yet? Anything else that we could bring forward here in the conversation?
I'm all set.
Okay. Chief, I commend you and those who are members of the volunteer fire company. You're very important to our community, valued. As you know, public safety just has ranked right at the top of the list in terms of what came out of the plan of conservation and development. I think the town, as we have moved forward with limited resources, but definitely moving forward, have always give consideration to the volunteer fire company. We hear what you're saying, and you know, it's a matter of, okay, where are we in time that we can make some accommodations. So to this point, the budget was approved and moved forward to the Board of Selectmen without per diem firefighters in that budget. But there was a commitment to bring the issue up at the public hearing so that we could have individual residents be more informed and add a voice to the need that you're bringing forward. So, and I think even tonight, I know board members learned things that heretofore they did not know. Anything else? Last round here for the chief?
No,
All right,
thank you, Chief.
Hearing none. Chief, thank you very much for your time. It definitely has been very informative. Do you have any closing remarks?
No problem.
All right.
Nope, I think we're good. Thank you for your time and listening tonight.
Thanks, Chief. Good to hear from you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, chief.
Again, we're in the midst of a special meeting, just adhering to the agenda. Agenda item number 3 is the Board of Finance alternate vacancy and applicant review. So one of the things I had requested was this whole issue. You've gotten a couple of pieces of minority representation. We went out and got a rendering from the town attorney relative to how should the vacancy of the alternate be filled. Now, as you know, we have 2. The vacancy was created by Ann Aiken, moving up, ascending to a seat on the Board of Finance. Ann is a Republican, and that makes 4 registered Republicans sitting on the board, with 1 unaffiliated and 1 Democrat. The other alternate slot we have is filled by an elected Republican who for nearly 2 years now has not shown up at any of the meetings. So just so the other board members know where we're at with that, I have had a succession of 3 letters that have gone to that individual. That's Chris Hunt, asking either for him to give us a definition as to his status, or if he is not able to meet his responsibilities as an elected official, to submit a statement of resignation to the town clerk, which would thereby open up another alternate seat. So most recently was a letter that was sent out the end of last week, with all of this kind of in process. And the letter I covered for selectmen. And because Mr. Hunt is a Republican, also the chair of the Republican Town Committee. So the most recent piece that I had Christine Diaz send out was a rendering by Attorney Keppel relative to guidance on how should we fill or consider filling the alternate seat. So if you've read through that, he is strongly recommending, based on state statutes, that it be filled by a non-Republican. And in that event, we do have 2 applicants, Sarah Nelson and Joe Patermi, both who have applied. I think that I'm now, kind of polling the board members to come up with, okay, how do we, move forward with the process at this point? Dan Smith, looks like you want to be recognized.
First of all, I did read Nick's opinion, and the third to last paragraph said, as evidenced by the email provided by town clerk Picario, and the Office of Secretary of State concurs with this interpretation of requirements for the relevant state statutes, which basically, from what I'm understanding, he agrees with what Antoinette and Mr. Bromley was talking about before. Now, I forwarded the board on the 21st a set of questions I sent to Antoinette, and I asked her point blank, if 4 permanent members that were a part of the Republican Party attended the board meeting, business can be conducted and voted on? She said yes. If 4 permanent members that were a part of the Republican Party attended a board meeting and a Republican alternate shows up, the Republican alternate would not be seated due to violating minority representation statutes. Is that correct? She said yes. So I think the question, what people are getting wrapped around the axle is what the term is seated. An alternate is not technically a part of the Board of Finance. And Nick says it very, very clear that since the Board of Finance is made up of a 6-member body, we have to seat an alternate. They have their own minority representation statutes. So we should be, and I asked Antoinette point blank, lastly, as a general statement, would the Board of Finance be allowed to seat a Republican in the alternate spot vacated by Ann Aiken and still be able to conduct business, make policy, and vote without issue with minority representation, as long as we did not violate the no more than 4 Republicans on the board seated at one time, or per any of the scenarios above? She said yes. So
Okay.
I believe that the other 2 Republicans should be a part of this conversation to fill that vacancy.
A couple of things come to mind, and I don't know if it's been intended by the statute, but if you have a 6-member board
Yep.
and 2 are vacant, let's say, which means that you've left the majority, or say 4 Republicans seated,
Yes.
even though you may have an alternate.
You have a quorum.
Let me finish, Dan. Let me finish. You have alternates who are present but not seated. Are you intentionally segregating them from the debate and business to be brought forward?
They can't vote. We're not seating them because it would.
Dan,
violate
Dan, I don't see you as the expert. I think I pose a very plausible question.
And I asked
Can
the
we be
town clerk.
Can we be accused of prejudicing seating an alternate?
I'm not sure the question. So by not seating the alternate, Dan, is that what you're saying?
Not seating the
Well, that's
alternate.
what Dan is proposing. If we had alternates, that we don't seat them. So are we prejudicing, the business by not seating an alternate who may be a minority member?
If it's a minority member, they could get seated, because if we have 4 Republicans on the board that make a quorum, and as long as that person's a Democrat, yeah, you could seat that person as a Democrat. But if they're Republican, we wouldn't be seating another Republican. We would violate minority representation.
Right. So the only way that what you're suggesting there, Dan Smith, as I see it now, if it was we had 4 Republicans that were made up the quorum, seated Republicans, we wouldn't need to seat another Republican.
We had it tonight. We had it tonight. Paul Simon, Dan Spring, Dan Smith, Ann Aiken, and we had an unaffiliated. We had a quorum. We had minorities representation. Then Mike Anderson popped online. We had minorities representation, and that was no problem. We can conduct, per our town attorney, per our town clerk, we can conduct business with 4 Republicans on the board and have a quorum.
Right. No, that's the way I understood the clerk's response too. And we did another opinion from the attorney. And if we got another opinion, there will be another opinion. They are simply opinions. But I think by state statute, you are correct. We wouldn't be violating, to my knowledge, we wouldn't be violating anything by just having an alternate Republican. So I'd be happy to.
They can be a part of the discussion.
Oh, for sure.
They can't vote. We
Right.
as the board, really per the state statute, whoever is absent, if I'm absent and I'm a Republican, I can name my alternate.
Okay, Mike Anderson, I'm going to recognize you. You've had your hand up.
Dan Smith, I don't disagree with your analysis on that. I mean, at this point, if Chris Hunt decided to show up for a meeting and I didn't show up, or Carolyn didn't show up, they could technically be brought. He'd be the only one that could be seated, but you couldn't seat him because you'd be violating minority representation. So then you have, someone who you're losing the voice of part of the voting population from being able to give their opinion and actually to exercise their right to vote for the taxpayers.
Well,
So whether you can do it and whether you should do it is really the question, Dan. So I think the opinion is that you're better to provide a better chance for actual minority representation by seating a non-Republican in the present vacancy, particularly since the other alternate is a Republican already. Now, that's the question. Do you want to provide this town, which is almost 1-to-1 Republican and Democrat? You guys have maybe 150 votes ahead overall, to say, no, we're going to have a super majority and that's going to be good for the town. It's just not good for the town. And if it was the opposite, Dan, I would concede that a Republican should be seated, because it's good for the town to hear opposing viewpoints on certain issues. And really, I mean, we're probably this far apart on the bell curve. But whether you can do it and whether you should do it are two different things. There's no question in my mind that we should have either a Democrat or unaffiliated or independent or whatever to give us some opposing viewpoints.
Ann, I'm going to recognize you next, please. Ann?
Oh, well, I'm just going to say that mathematically, if somebody is going to be absent from the board, it's a greater than 50% chance that that absentee person is going to be Republican, with 4 Republicans on the board. Just saying.
But it's also saying, Ann, that it could be filled by another Republican. Carolyn Howell, you're next.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe when I was first, brought onto the board, and initially we were in the same situation where there was more Republicans than Democrats. And I mean, I don't recall it really being a problem, other than, if somebody was out, you would have to, name who was going to replace you. And then I think at one point, Tim Maine switched his affiliation because he was running for first selectman, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, that's where things started to change a bit. But I believe it was the same way. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not sure if anyone else recalls.
I think we've, because I've had a long history with the board, we've had people who have changed affiliations, have, dropped off, times where we barely could make a quorum. I think what we're talking about here is, okay, if we had our druthers relative to developing kind of a balanced situation, what would we do? And that was one of the reasons why, other than us interpreting the statutes, I wanted to get a rendering from an attorney who was going to render the statutes for us, the opinion. Yes, Carolyn.
I just have one more question, because I've thought a lot about this. So Anne was an alternate on the board, and she showed up at every meeting, she participated, and I feel she's fair. So that's why I agree with her being in the position that she's in. She was elected for her position. Somebody had brought it to my attention. I actually had forgotten that she ran against someone else from the Democratic Party, and she actually won that spot. So that being said, I mean, if it was an elected position and the spot was won by the vote, I mean, wouldn't it make sense to replace that person because of that vote. And I'm just looking at this objectively, just because I am unaffiliated. I'm just, if you're looking at numbers and the results of the election, I'm just curious.
If I'm understanding your argument, the same could be said for Mustafa.
Well, Mustafa chose to leave and take another position because his, he was taking Mark Donahue's spot. So, I mean, that we don't have any control over. That was a choice, a personal choice. It's just like, I'm trying to think of who left in the middle. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, but it's similar in that Anne, we gave her the opportunity to move up and it was her choice to move up.
Well, and she was already very knowledgeable and participating already and active.
I'm just trying to keep it in line with, I think, what you're trying to say. Dan Smith, you had your hand up?
I believe Mustafa's spot was elected by minority representation during the last election. And Carolyn was correct. Also, she, Ann did run against Connie Berardi and won that spot.
So I don't recall. I mean, you're saying that Mustafa ran unopposed? Is that what you're saying, or?
I believe so.
Yeah, I don't have his. I don't recall, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Paul Simon.
Yeah, so I guess where do we go with this? So I think we have opinions, but we are able to elect who we please, and the board will decide, the majority of the board will decide on that. So how do you see this playing out, Mr. Chairman? Do we name the 4 names now and talk about them some more, and then it'll lead to nominations? Because I do believe that we are on solid legal footing to allow us to elect who this board chooses to. There might not be what everybody wants, but that's why we have a committee, right? And not just a single person determining this. And I'm ready to move forward with nominations if that's the path that we think we're at right now.
I think what I'm toiling a little bit with is, if we had 4 members seated, all Republican, and yet our alternate was there and could be seated for the sake of a vote, even though we have a quorum, are we unknowingly prejudicing our position by not seating the alternate? Whereby, we would have no minority representation if the alternate was to be a Republican. And that's the only thing I'm wrestling with. I'm trying to understand the statute myself. I mean,
Right.
But, we unknowingly can prejudice who votes. And at least in this meeting, I don't have an answer for that. Mike Anderson, you're recognized.
I'm just going back to, the fact that you can doesn't mean that it's good policy. I mean, the person who is the alternate, who has, is supposed to come to all the meetings and participate in all the conversations, just is not going to be able to vote. You're not going to be able to seat them if it's Caroline or I that is not there, and it's just not representative of this town, and it's bad policy. And if you guys do this, I think you're doing a disservice to the town. If you decide to put a Republican on, now you have 2 Republican alternates on, and you have I go back to my quote from last week. It's just, you lose the benefit of having different ideas, different perspectives to elicit debate to really bat it around from all people's of the town, the taxpayers' perspectives. And, you know, if I'm coming into these meetings and it's basically 5-1 all the time, you know, you're going to lose. I just feel like I'm going to get beat down, and I got 3 more years to go. And I mean, I think we all have a lot of things in common. There are, you know, you guys have certain core beliefs that are very strong, and you know, I'm not knocking you for it. It's just a different way of thinking, and we need different perspective on this board.
I think,
And Caroline, I mean,
I'm sorry.
Before you were unaffiliated, did you run as a Democrat or did you run as a Republican? If you don't mind me asking.
No, I don't mind at all. I actually, I was asked by Tim Main Sr. to run initially the first time for the Republican Party. I was not ever a Republican. I've always was unaffiliated, and they required me to change my affiliation to Republican, which I did. And then with all the shenanigans that went on with the prior administration, I got frustrated and I changed back to unaffiliated. And I said that I would never change back to being a Republican. And when the Democrats needed someone to run this go round, I told them I would run under one condition, that I remain unaffiliated, because that's what I am. I believe I'm fair and I'm, you know, the middle of the road. I do have strong beliefs, but I think they're balanced, and I do represent both sides of the aisle. And that's what this is why I dislike this sort of thing, because I'm not a political person. I'm doing this.
Sure.
I'm not doing it for politics at all.
And I'm just saying, like, you know, throughout all the meetings that I've attended with you, you know, you say that you want to represent the taxpayers, and the taxpayers are Republicans, Democrats. There's more unaffiliated people than there are Republicans or Democrats. You know, so whether or not someone was elected, you know, Ann was elected, Staff was elected, I was elected. I mean, you know, the fact of the matter is, do you want to have a board that's going to represent this town in the best possible manner, you know, and be able to put forward different perspectives that make us think, and not have the same people running the show? That it's not a democracy.
But again, I would have to say that there are people that are either, you know, they are either Republican or Democrat. That's how they identify. But they also are, you know, in the middle also. They're not, that's just how they identify. So it doesn't really mean that they're, you know, very extreme to one degree or the other. It's just that's how they identify when, you know, they register to vote. So, I mean, when I'm looking at a candidate, I'm looking at somebody who's, you know, who I would be able to, you know, talk to and work with, and, you know, that they would have an open mind and see, you know, both sides of the equation. And, you know, once they've had a conversation about whatever it is that we're talking about, that maybe they would be swayed one way or the other, not just no, you know, not just I'm going to always vote no because, you know, I don't want my taxes to go up, or whatever the case may be, or I'm always going to vote yes for this other thing to the other extreme, just because that's how the other party, you know, goes with certain things. So I just think I'm looking at the person, not the affiliation, I guess. It's like, so what is their history? You know, how have they handled other situations? I guess that's how I would have to look at it.
Yeah, I think, Caroline, I think that's your thought, which is a strong one. I think Mike is making the point, how is the board perceived by the public at large, you know, all taxpayers, you know, whether they're Republican or Democrat, you know, are we representing the taxpayers as a balanced board, which is not our mandate. I'll remind everybody that's not our mandate, but that it does create a problem if it should come to minority representation? And does it mean that we have a majority that then prejudices minority representation? And I guess that's where my question lies. And I'm going to recognize you, Ann Aiken.
Well, actually, for full disclosure, I am actually unaffiliated, but I was asked to change to Republican to run for this position. But in all honesty, I am unaffiliated.
You
The
would have
other-
to change that with the registrar, Ann.
Yeah, I know. But the other thing, so looking at Chris Hunt's position, at what point do we say he's not responding and we're going to fill his position?
You bring up a very good point. And I actually got a rendering from the attorney on that. And the answer was, there's nothing I can do about it. He's an elected official.
Oh, geez.
Unless it should be, I hate to say it, a death. He still holds the seat until that tenure is complete, even though he hasn't participated. And so, I mean, I've reached out to him. I felt it's been my responsibility, and have informed others within the town that I think need to know, and I've gotten no response. And his term goes to November 21.
Do we know if he's even still living here?
To my knowledge, yes, he is. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, he lives right down the street from me.
Okay. Mike knows.
I see him every so often driving around.
And he's had the occasion. I mean, he personally has seen me at, near the town hall, at times of referendums or elections, and doesn't speak to it. Mike Anderson.
I mean, just going back to, let's say, I don't show up or Caroline doesn't show up, and you have, 4 Republicans that are seated, and 1 either Democrat or unaffiliated that are seated, and then the alternate can be part of the conversation but can't be seated. It's you have basically a 4-to-1 super majority on everything. It doesn't seem like it's a fair. I mean, on a close vote, that maybe it's that it's one of you guys could go either way. You're losing that 6th person that could sweat, could either cancel a vote out or not. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's fulfilling the purpose of having a 6-member board if constantly it's the chance of having a non-seated alternate in there. It doesn't sit right with me. It wouldn't, and like I said, if it was the opposite way, guys, I wouldn't sit right with me either.
All right. So I guess you said it right earlier. I mean, it's really, we are, the most of us, right in the fat part of that bell curve. And
We
maybe
are.
Maybe there's an outlier here or there. Like, I think a great example is the budget we just went through. We had some robust debate. We were all from one end of the spectrum to the other. And in the end, we made it happen with 4 Republicans. So I think, I don't see that as a concern. I think we have a candidate, a Republican here tonight as an alternate that is going to be that moderate voice. He's got kids in the school system, supporter of the school. He's led many committees in town, but a businessman in town. He's, does a lot of bipartisan things. Party of the parties comes up to, in my mind. And it's for that reason that I'm going to nominate Brett Mastriani for this spot here tonight for our alternate.
I'll second that.
Yeah, in fairness to the applicants, I mean, as chair, I haven't gotten any sense that any of you are familiar with, two of the other applicants. I mean, I know you're very familiar with Brett, as Paul has just brought forward. The other Republican applicant that has been very much involved in town doings is Sean Murphy. But then we have two others that are either unaffiliated or Democrat, that being Sarah Nelson and Joe Potermi. And I'm not certain that anybody, has, other than read their applicant, has talked to them relative to their experience and what they might bring to the Board of Finance.
Yeah, I did read their applications as well, Dan. Sarah, I actually heard her speak
Mhm.
a couple of weeks ago at one of our committees. Maybe it wasn't our committee, another committee. Definitely another strong candidate, but I think Brett is the one with the most experience that's going to bring, and that moderate voice, nothing too polarized. So it's not the one that's going to cause a lot of contentious feelings, I believe, because he is well respected in town. So I don't want to say that I'm not being fair to the other ones, because I think I am. I know them, know of them anyway. One has very little experience. Sarah, I think, has a bit more. Sean certainly has a wealth of experience. But at this point in time, I believe that Brett would be the person that would best fulfill what the town is looking for on this committee.
Yeah, and well, just talking to that, I don't see it necessarily as a conflict, but again, it's a point of perception. Brett, and I applaud his participation in town, is the chair of the Republican Town Committee.
Right. Yep, that's for sure. Now, I think, and again, it's the voters who are going to tell us next November, if they like to make up this board. And if we're making the wrong decision here tonight, or attempting to, they're going to tell us that, because I won't be sitting in this seat, or you won't, or Dan won't, or what are the other Republicans won't be sitting in one of these chairs. So I think the voters will tell us whether they approve what we're doing here tonight. And I'm prepared for that consequence.
Mike Anderson.
A point of order, there's a motion on the table and a second.
What's the discussion?
It hasn't been brought by the chair to say it was open for discussion.
Well, I'm happy to do that, Dan. Dan, I would remind you not to be contentious. I don't think that adds to the position that we're talking about, or the issues.
I'm just stating.
Let's maintain decorum.
Okay.
Mike Anderson, you're recognized.
I am a friend of Brett's. I admire Brett. I think a lot of him. I feel bad because, I'm not able to support him in this particular situation. I mean, I think if we were able to get either Sarah or Joe appointed to the board, and something happens with Chris Hunt, that Brett would be a valuable asset. I just think that, the fact that, Paul and Dan Smith are very involved in the Republican Town Party, and they're very close to Brett. I think it's just, there's not enough separation of ideas and ideals to make this happen for Brett. It's just, it's not, and with all due respect to him, and I'll tell, and I will tell him, personally, I said, I'm sorry, I couldn't vote for him for the first selectman, because I felt that Mike Ergo was the best person for the job and was doing the job. And we are still friends, I hope. And it's nothing personal. It is just a philosophical, difference of opinion on who should be on this board to make this board a better board. I mean, Sarah has, you know, she's got financial experience that I think is, you know, well above what's necessary for this job. I mean, it's, you know, and, you know, and I know Joe, and Joe's, you know, one of those middle of the road guys that is involved with the town. So I think either of those candidates would be very valuable assets. And they want to be involved. And, you know, with all due respect to Brett, it's just, we already have Paul and Dan on this board. I don't think we need Brett as well.
I think relative to adding to the discussion, I also, for all the organizations I've been at, it's amazing that it always, the activity and the drive seems to always fall to a core group of people. And yet, you know, I have to say that bringing in somebody who is willing to make a commitment, they may be new, can add a lot to the discussion and adding color to where we go. And sometimes it's not a big idea, it could be a small idea that all of a sudden is a pivot in how we navigate ourselves. And so I think a lot could be added there. And that, you know, I'd like to see experience, certainly. But I also realize, having new members on the Board of Finance, that it's an educational process. And you know, I hope that I've served all of you in helping you become educated as to what our responsibility is, what the process is, what are some of the things we should be looking at, what the link ups are that really move the town forward. And I was having a discussion with our first selectman, just talking about, okay, we got a public hearing. How are we going to orchestrate this? How is it going to be conducted, and so forth. And I had to say, you know, that the budget process and the Board of Finance really becomes the engine that helps us move the town forward and bring to reality things that we have set as goals in our plan of conservation and development. And as we said earlier, sometimes it's, you know, hammer and tong, and it's not easy. It's a lot of debate and compromise just to move little things forward. But I mean, that's the essence of what our responsibility is an oversight board, but to bring about a town that's run fiscally responsible, but yet with an eye to the future. So, and that, you know, I personally think that there should be some balance. I said that early on. I don't want to be in a position where there is a situation where we could prejudice a minority voice. So, any other discussion relative to the motion? I know we haven't talked about the other candidates in depth at all, but you know, I'm hoping that all of you did review their applications. I was hoping to actually move us to a point where we could interview and have standard questions that we could ask all of them. But I first wanted to get clarity, which I'm not sure has been accomplished by the minority representation. So, I mean, I asked town assets to be used to bring clarity to the issue. And so that's why, you know, you've had the statute sent to you, you've had the rendering by Attorney Keppel from Sussman Shapiro on the statutes. Anybody else want to add to the discussion? Okay, and Mike Henderson.
You know, while I agree with that Dan Smith, that, you know, business can be conducted, I just think that we should really take the advice of our council that this particular position should be filled by a non-Republican. You know, for getting business done with the proper number of committee members that are able to be seated properly to vote on these issues, these very important issues. We should have 6 people voting on it, not 5.
And Aiken, you're recognized. Thank you, Mike.
Well, I don't think there's any great hurry to do this, is there?
No, you bring up a good point. I mean, we don't have an immediate need simply because we have a complete complement to the board. And I would say board members that are committed to their responsibilities and show at the meeting so that business can be conducted. No, so you bring up a good point. The vacancy exists, but it's not something that necessarily has to be complete tonight. I would have to say that. I think the applicant certainly would like to know, where are we on the continuum and what's the process? And I was trying to develop clarification relative, again, I'm replowing the field, but minority representation. So, I'm sorry, Ann, go ahead.
I'm not adverse to bringing the candidates in to interview. I think this would actually be a good thing.
I think what it does is it shows consideration to those who have applied. So back to discussion, Paul.
Please. Yeah, I know. So we've been at this for, it's been 4 weeks now. We've had a number of applications. We've
3
read
weeks,
them.
actually. Yeah.
Sorry. I'm sorry, who was that?
Me, 3 weeks, actually.
3 weeks, yeah. We had a couple candidates early. We had a couple at the end of the, end of the time. I think we know who they are. We know what they represent. I think it's time to fill it. I don't know that waiting any longer adds anything to the discussion. I think there's some strong folks out there. Anyone would do a great job. I happen to think that Brett would do the best job for you, Mr. Chairman, this board, and the town of North Stonington, given his wealth of experience. And I'm ready to move forward tonight to fill this role.
So we have a nomination and a second. Usually we open it up for any other nominations, which I have not heard.
Right.
Right, seems like,
There are no other nominations?
yeah, it's a situation in this process where, there should be other nominations, of course, because we have applicants, but yet there's a motion on the floor with a second. Mike Anderson.
I just think, to Ann's point, I mean, I would make a nomination for Sarah right now. But I just think, we should probably have these candidates on to really properly vet them, at a future meeting. So, I mean, right now we have a motion, a nomination and a second, so we'll leave it at that at this point.
All right, so we'll bring it to a vote on the nomination of Brett Mastriani to fill the vacancy left by Ann Aiken. So I have to do this by polling. We've done this before. So Paul, we start with you.
Aye.
Carolyn Howell,
Yes.
Ann Aiken,
Aye.
Mike Anderson,
That polling was, all right, no.
Dan Smith,
Yes.
and I vote nay. So that motion passes. and with the appointment of Brett as alternate, which I would remind the Board of Finance members that this is against the opinion of our town attorney.
But consistent with our town clerk's guidance.
Can but shouldn't.
That's fair, Mike.
All right, so we move on.
I really appreciate the, the support there, guys. That makes this such a well-rounded board.
For the other applicants, if they're on tonight, I would have to say a letter will be coming forthwith, thanking you for your interest in that position and your sense of commitment to the town. And general elections go to November of 2021. And for Brett Mastriani, we welcome him as an alternate to the Board of Finance. Okay, next on the agenda, I believe, are minutes. And I hope all of you have reviewed them. There's a set of 3. And in your review, do we have amendments? Any comments? Any amendments? Looking at the 3, in my own review, May 6th, I was okay with. May 20th, there were 2 on May 20th. One was a special meeting and one was a regular meeting.
Right.
I think I was okay with the special.
On May 20th, under number 3A, therefore is spelled wrong. I just need the E on the end.
Are you on the regular meeting, Carolyn?
It is,
Yes, that's the regular one.
And it was the word therefore, is that what you picked up?
Yes.
That's marked as well. And while we're on those sets of minutes, on the public comment, 9B, I guess it was number in 4. If the town approves a proposed budget at town hearing, and I'm not sure that that was meant town meeting. And I'm sure the budgets are approved by whatever it's going to be, referendum, whatever.
Right. Essentially what I meant by that is if we don't get any pushback at the town hearing where we have to amend anything.
Okay, so it should be at the public hearing.
Yes.
Okay, and that I don't remember putting forth approximately 0.85.
No, Sean did.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe that should be made clearer, because I wasn't sure who was putting forward the 0.85.
Okay,
In other words, it wasn't coming from the Board of Finance is kind of my point.
correct.
All right. Any other amendments, Mike?
I had a question on the May 20th.
Special or
On-
regular?
I think the regular
Okay,
on number 3B,
yes.
It said Board of Finance did not vote on motion by Chairman Dan Spring for Board of Finance to approve the Board of Education budget at a 2.5% increase. Didn't we
Table.
move that forward?
And at the May 6th meeting, we tabled that motion.
Okay,
Yeah, I see Mike's point, though. Maybe it should, have a little more definition that that was a tabled motion brought forward
Okay,
to the May 20th meeting.
right, because we did vote to pass 5-1 at that time, correct?
In the May 20th meeting, yes.
right.
We
In
did.
the May 20th meeting, we did.
But the motion originated in the May 6th meeting.
Correct.
Okay, right.
All right, so if I add a sentence that says motion was tabled at May 6th meeting,
And brought to a vote at the May 20th meeting. To approve the Board of Education budget at a 2.5% increase.
okay, all right.
Yeah, that brings more clarity, Mike. Thank you.
And just on bullet 3 of those same minutes, is that value for the unassigned 225 consistent with Christine's latest printing of the budget? I mean, it's a rounding error perhaps, but I think the actual budget says 224,000 and some change.
So Paul, the motion you guys made was for the 225, 232. So that's the number that needs to stay in the minutes. That number that shows up in the budget is the difference when you have the theoretical mill rate, as I will refer to it. So we would have, I want to say it's around $700 going back into the undesignated,
Okay.
but there's just not a way to show that in the way the budget document's structured.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other than that, it's perfect.
All right, so I would move that we approve previous minutes as a group for May 6th, May 20th special meeting, May 20th regular meeting as amended. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dan Smith. All right, any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All right, 600 is what I've got. All right. Okay, we're now open for agenda number 5, public comments. Christine, if you could help us out.
Yep, so if you're on the phone, you need to hit *6 to unmute yourself. If you're on your computer or smart device, just unmute yourself and make sure that you say your name before you start talking. If I have turned off your camera earlier in the meeting, you won't be able to turn it back on. That's just a function of Zoom. I apologize. So if anybody has any comments, let us know now.
Any public comments? The call is for public comments. I'm seeing no alert. Christine, do you have anybody?
I have nothing.
Me. Can you hear
Oh.
me?
Yes, we can. Can you just tell everybody your name?
I'm Beth Cooper Vettalino, and I'm a registered Republican. And I was really disappointed that you didn't even talk to the other candidates. I wanted to hear what they have to say. Having a fresh view would be helpful because I see you guys being stuck in your positions. I've watched you the last 4 weeks, and it would just be nice to have someone else new and give you a fresh, and you didn't even give them a chance. You took someone you knew and you didn't even discuss it. So that's my opinion. And I'm really disappointed.
Me too.
So thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate your input. Any others? Anyone else want to say something?
Yeah, Joe Casada.
Okay, Joe, go ahead. We got you.
So I just need a little clarification. So you had the chief of the fire company come do a presentation tonight to see if to put funding into the budget for the per diem staffing, and you forward the current budget to the town selectmen without the funding for the fire, for the 2 per diem firemen. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, which.
Why did you about it? Why did you waste the chief's time or everybody's time here if you weren't going to support it at all? I mean, I thought we were working together here to protect this town, and you're not listening to them what the problems are when the volunteers of the fire company are telling you straight out over and over again that we have a problem during the day. I just don't understand what you guys don't understand about this. Something's going to happen and it's going to fall back on you guys. As long as you understand that. It's very disturbing that you guys are not listening to the big picture here. When the fire chief has come out to you and the volunteer of the fire company unanimously say we have a problem during the day and we need to address this, and you still are not addressing it. So when something happens, keep your phones on, because I'll be the first one to call all you guys. So how are you going to answer that question now? Why are you not funding it?
In terms of inviting the chief, when I spoke with him.
You already made a decision, Dan. You wasted this time. You made a decision. You did not listen to what the fire company's asking you to do.
Joe, I would think that a lot of information was shared tonight that heretofore had not been shared, and that I had made a commitment to bring the issue up at the public hearing.
If you guys are not going to support it as a team, as a town, to push this forward, what do you think a taxpayer is going to say? Well, if the Board of Finance doesn't support it and the Board of Selectmen don't support it, of course the taxpayer is not going to support it. You need to work together as a team to move this town forward, to protect this town. So of course every taxpayer is going to say, well, if they don't think it's important, we shouldn't think it's important either. Am I wrong by saying that? I think that's very obvious to me. If the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen don't support it, they don't think it's a need. Until something happens, guys, until something happens.
Right, Joe, thank you. Carolyn Howell, I see you got your hand up.
I know that we had discussed it at a few meetings before, where when the selectmen, we took out, I think it was around $108,000 from, I think it was the road work. And then the school, I think, needed 58,000 to, I don't know, I think it was for the middle school sports and some of the teachers' assistants or whatever that money that they were missing. So as I understood it, there was extra money available in the budget that could be placed for at least 1 per diem to get it going, if that's what, you know, was appropriate and we all agreed on. And we also, I think, agreed that we would revisit this after the public hearing. So I don't think it was necessarily that we weren't going to readdress it. It's just that we needed to have, you know, the fire company heard. The chief had to be heard.
All right, Ann Aiken.
Well, I think we also still have the option of putting it on as a separate line item. And that does a number of things. Mike Anderson said that he wanted to see the town vote it in because he didn't expect anybody to actually vote it out. If you put it as a separate line item, that's essentially people voting it in. If they vote yes, then they voted it in. It also keeps it from getting confused with any other budget issues. If somebody disagrees with something in the selectmen's budget and vote it down, and you have the per diem firefighter in there lumped in with the Board of Selectmen's budget, then you don't know if it got voted down because of the per diems or because of something else. So I think keeping it separate is the best way to go and essentially answers everybody's questions.
All right, any other, thank you, Ann. Any other public comments? All right, hearing none, I would move for adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dan again. Very nice.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
All right, and we'll put the time at 8:48 PM.
Bitch, another time they
Thank you, Dan.
didn't recognize me.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
On to the public hearing, June 1st. There'll probably be a couple of slides that I'll develop, give to Christine Diaz, and have you have a preview before the meeting. Yes, Carolyn?
so I was just curious, with this public hearing, the way it's going to be, are we going to ask the taxpayers to state like their name and address and verify that they're actually taxpayers? Do you know what I mean? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
Because
we're gonna, under the circumstances, we're gonna do the best we can.
I think
relative
Chris
to
is
that.
raising her hand. Christy did.
Christina's-
Answer. So the format that we're using is the webinar function of Zoom. So everyone will be an attendee other than the people that are giving presentations. When they, if you're on the phone, you're going to hit *9 to raise your hand virtually. And on the computer, you're going to literally hit the raise hand button. And then when you are recognized, you do have to state your name and your address.
I just have one more question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
How are the taxpayers going to know about this meeting who don't get like direct emails and things
We
like
put the legal ad in the paper. It ran on Sunday.
Sunday? Okay. In which papers?
Everything runs in the Westerly Sun.
So not the day, not the.
Everything for the town runs in the Westerly Sun.
That's it. Okay, interesting. Because a lot of people don't get the Sun anymore because they raise
Yeah.
their prices. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you guys spread the word. The document was sent out to all of you. It's posted on the website, it's on social media, and we're doing what we can to reach everyone.
All right, I think we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dan.
And we don't talk in between Monday.
Yes.